Let's start this green drake with a thread base, very short one, at the 1/4 point, and we'll just start and stop in probably a distance of about the width of the gap of the hook. We'll make our tail out of some Coq de Leon hackle fibers and set that in place and bind them on the hook. Notice that I'm binding them to the bare shank of the hook. That makes my tail set a lot straighter. And then I always come back from a pull point in the middle of the hook, right about there. And then I come back with my thread and slip it under the tail and then go back to that pull point in the center of the hook. What that does is kind of fan the tail out. Now, if you don't want the tail fanned out, and I would prefer that it's not, I'm going to wrap back there one more time now. Now that I've set my tail at the straight angle I want, I'm just going to take a turn of thread on it to gather the tail, and then I'll come back, trim off the waist, get ready for the next part of the fly. Now I'm going to take a couple of big old garbage feathers out of the top end of the neck and just sweep those fibers back on a piece of stem that's as long or longer than the shank of the hook. And then I'll take and even this up on both sides of the hook so that, or the stem, so it's the same length in both sides. I'll set that bodkin down and I'll tie my wing on to the length that I want it to be. Maybe a little bit shorter, and then I'm just going to pull it out to the length that it should be. Just like we're doing right here. Now we'll take and trim off the waist. Notice that I'm laying my scissors in flat along the shank from the opposite side of the hook. And what that does is makes a very steep cut, and it blends the tail and the wing together. As you can see right there, that's pretty well blended. Let me get here and wrap over that one time. We'll stand the wings up. And we'll divide them. Pull that back and just trim off the waist. And that'll give us a set of wings. We want to crisscross between them just to provide a little bit of separation. And there you've got the wings. You take a look at that. Oh, it looks pretty good. Now I got to find my dubbing. I'll be off camera for just a moment while I do that. We're going to use some wax to sticky up the thread, make it tacky. What that does is grabs the dubbing fibers, and then we can just twist our dubbing into place. Now that makes a nice, even, and sparse application of dubbing. Make sure I gather that tail just the way I want that tail pulled together. And that gets me a dub body right here on the back part of the fly that I'm looking for. Now, I've got some dubbing left over. I'm not going to worry about that. That'll be just fine. It'll hide in amongst the hackle as I add the hackle. Now I need to drop off camera again for a moment while I dig up some hackle. We're just going to prepare this grizzly feather. That's what I'm going to use. This fly calls for grizzly or blue dun or even a grizzly brown mix if you want. I know a few guys that also mix grizzly with yellow. But anyway, it's what we're using here now to illustrate this standard Wonder Wing. Now that's a bad thing that just happened. I just nicked a couple fibers on my wing, and we'll pretend that didn't happen and get rid of them and go ahead and finish our fly. But that's not the kind of thing you want to do on camera, but stuff happens when you're not paying attention. And I was watching other things too closely, and that's what happens. Anyway, I'll wrap my hackle into place. Notice that I'm really pushing it tight up against the front of those wings. How often have you looked at the opposite side of your fly only to find a gap there? Well, you can fill that in by the way you wrap the hackle that first turn in front of the wings. You really jam it back in there so that it fills in that gap and you don't have to deal with that. Now we'll just tie that off. Now I see an awful lot of fly tyers get up to this point on their fly and make a pretty good looking fly and then mess it up when they build the head. Well, I've only got 2 turns anchoring this hackle right now. I'm going to take and pull the hackle fibers back and then wrap a thread base. There's also a jam knot that pushes back on that hackle. See how that's already kicking back a little bit? Well, let's just continue to build that thread head. We want our thread head to be a little bit less than the width of the hook eye. Now you see how that's kicked back right there? We won't worry about that for right now, but let's go ahead and put on a half hitch to finish the fly. Now we'll put on a whip finish and another whip finish. Interesting how if you don't have a bead head, you can use a half hitch tool to do a whip finish or a half hitch, whichever you wish. Now I'm going to trim off the waist and then kind of fluff everything up, make sure my fly looks good. Now this is a great fly. It looks good. The wings are a little bit stiff because it's a standard Wonder Wing with the stem tied to the hook shank. And we've found that you do a lot better if you'll loop your wing. And in our ebook, a new ebook, we show you how to do that on a number of different patterns. This pattern right here, in a slightly different color, is in chapter 1, so you can see what the standard Wonder Wing looks like, and then you can learn some of the tricks that we've learned over the years to loop that wing so that it doesn't cause a stiff wing to twist up your leader. That's kind of frustrating. Anyway, we'll put a link at the bottom of this YouTube video for you to find that, and you can buy the book if you want, just by following the link and typing Wonder Wing in the search engine. But in any case, enjoy this kind of tying here.